Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I picked this quote because our friend, our guest, Marvin Joles, I first met, founder of Blacktop Banter, Dubuque Maintenance, Wis-Coat. I met at the top contractor school and I heard him speak and share some of his story. And I thought, it's got to be Viktor Frankl that I picked today for this quote. So Marvin is an influencer within the, or influences, so let's try to use a non-pejorative, within the asphalt industry, maintenance industry, seal coat, all things, all things we likely take for granted if we're not in construction or around that sphere of influence. And just a good-hearted person who's helped a lot of people and brought attention to a space maybe a lot of people don't know about. So thanks for coming on the Culture Matters podcast, buddy.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I pay attention, as you know. It's one of my favorite podcasts to kind of take a peek at and keep in my back pocket, especially if I'm going down the road. And to be on is an honor.
Oh, this one? I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. There's a lot of high profile ones, right, that pop everywhere. And I always try to pay attention to content that my friends are putting out, and whether it interacts with me really well or not. But yours seems to, because as I went through life, I became somewhat of a philosopher, not by training, but I think just by circumstance, I guess. And I really enjoy the thoughts and the thought-provoking questions that you talk about here on the show.
What do you think in the spirit of that, right? This idea that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. What comes to mind when you hear that? Is that reflective of your journey up to this point?
Yeah, I think so. And I actually think it's it's an ongoing, to me, that's an ongoing attitude and a necessary ongoing attitude. I'm sure a little bit of, like you said, you heard me speak and tell a little bit of my story. I feel like maybe I was born with everything already taken. I grew up in an area where most people were pretty well off. I wasn't. I was born into poverty, and no mom, no dad. And I climbed up, right, thinking, well, this is what I got to do. I got to climb that ladder and get to a certain point. That way I'm on the level playing field with everybody else. Once I got there, I realized that they're all still trying to get to another playing field, or they're not happy where they are and they don't know what to do. Had a couple instances where bad things happen, or just bad luck or bad circumstance. I don't necessarily believe in luck. And just when I would climb to a crest, something would happen and it would unravel, and I'd go back down a pretty good peg, right? That was my first interaction kind of with a blow to the gut, like a depression or an anxiety about certain things. And rebuild, do a couple things. Way back then, you don't need much money when you're just a single man, not want very much of anything.
Yeah.
But would try to climb back up, get some equipment, and start doing work again with Wis-Coat. And then got married, got pregnant, and that put a whole new set of anxieties on me that I never really had anxiety as a kid or as a teenager, or in my early 20s. But for some reason, when the weight of responsibility fell on me, that was a new thing that had started to happen. And I didn't know how to deal with it, wasn't sure how to deal with it. I never really drank or did drugs or anything like that, never really had an escapism. And that's kind of where I started to realize that my attitude and the way that I perceived things and life and understood things in life really would determine whether I kept going or whether I would get beaten down, and how I perceived things. And even now, even today, stuff like that happens. We're dealing with something here recently at Wis-Coat that's a blow to the gut, right? We have core values, at Wis-Coat.
Oh, awesome.
When you walk in the door, there's 4 of them on the floor. They're unorthodox for the most part. But the very first thing that is painted on the floor with line striping paint is be positive here. And to me, that's the number one thing. It's a choice to be positive, no matter what. And if you're going to choose to put work clothes on, it's because you're going to work, right? If you're going to choose to go on vacation, it's because you want to enjoy yourself. Well, you can also choose to be positive. And there's a reason why you want to choose to be positive. And that's because it makes everybody else around there positive. It makes the stuff that happens to you during the day that is bad, be able to be weathered. And to me, that's all within positivity and where your thought process is.
The entrepreneur that's listening to this right now that might be in their mid-20s with a newborn or a young child and is thinking, how the heck am I going to make this work? What are you saying to them? Because they're listening.
Yeah, it's always one foot in front of the other. It's a day by day thing, right? Which is hard for me now. As I stated, I've somewhat become I philosophize about a lot of things. I also dive into the psychological aspects of a lot of things. That was not me. I never thought about those things. When I was young, now looking back, I realized that I had thought about those things, but I thought everybody was thinking about that type of stuff, right? I just thought, well, this is how humans think. And the more I began to interact, I was an introvert pretty well, because I was down a peg. I didn't really want to talk about my home life. I didn't want to talk about finances or money or anything or what I didn't have. I was always heavier set, which I'm working on now. So I didn't really have a great amount of confidence then. So I never.
Yeah, you look great, by the way. Like you've clearly been doing something. We should probably unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, we definitely can. So I never really was. I didn't really interact with people that much. I was always pretty funny, and that was a good cover for everything. So I would make great jokes. I would joke. I was really good at roasting teachers or other people around. It would help other people laugh. So I was always kind of sharp and quick that way, but never did I really dive in. I would say that for the most part, it's very, very important for a person to find themselves and make that a priority. I started doing that when we had our first child, Elizabeth. I wanted to figure out what I was capable of because I knew I needed to be capable of more in order to provide a life that I would be proud of providing for my family, right? Not necessarily that the rest of the world would be, but that I would be. And it was never really, you always hear people say, I want my kids to have everything I didn't have. That's not the case with me. It may have been a little bit at the beginning, but as I was changing, the realization came that I don't want that. I want them to have some of the things that I had because it made me into who I am now. And I really like who I am now. But also I want to be able to create experiences that I didn't have so that they become more cultured, right? For the most part, right. Well-rounded and well evened out. And I think we're there. There's a couple times where we still have some conversations of, I see their interactions, some of their gut movements and intuitions that are just kind of right off the cuff, and I challenge them to think about that, right? Those interactions, whether it's something they say, whether it's something they do, whether it's a way they behave. I challenge them and ask them why they would do that, and a lot of times they'll come up with, well, I don't really know. I said, well, that might be an issue, right? That you're not controlling your own actions. And I never had that before until I was probably in my I always say I'm a late bloomer about everything. And that was one of the things. But I think that would be the main piece of advice I would give somebody is don't be afraid to find yourself. Don't think just because your priority may not be make as much money as you can and work yourself to the bone in every waking hour that you're not doing what you should be doing. Society may tell you that, but that's totally not the truth. I think it's most important that your children know exactly who you are as they're growing up, because it's important for that. That's mainly, to me, that's the most important thing, because they can take a picture of everybody else and kind of cookie cutter it into a box, even if that's not what they do. I think it's very important that they don't put you there, because the things that you say should carry a lot of weight. And if it's the same stuff everybody else is saying, it may not have as much weight as it does by being independent of and uniquely you.
You think part of your real philosophy, this philosophy is is a consequence of you've interviewed and you've interacted with so many people over the last X amount of years of varying degrees of success. You think that has anything to do with this worldview that you've created or cultivated?
I think so.
Because like I'm thinking the perspectives that you're witnessing constantly.
Yeah, I think so, Jay. I think I take a lot from everybody. We're fortunate enough, you and I, to be around a lot of successful people in a lot of different ways. However, I would deem success, and however the world would deem success, a lot of them are successful in a lot of those ways. And it's not always the same thing. There's guys that I have met and interviewed and been around that are monetarily extremely successful, but yet extremely unsuccessful in the true happiness of their life, right? So as I love looking at some of your quotes and memes and things, and I know we share some back and forth on social media. One of them that you shared recently was like you spend your whole life, figuring out the meaning of life, and then you find out the meaning of life is just to die, right? Or whatever it was, along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, but that was something that gave me anxiety. The more that I learned about life, and that everything that I thought meant something really doesn't mean something, then I started questioning, well, why am I even here then? And why are we all here, right? I think that being around a certain type of person and the amount of people have kind of roughed the edges out of this, this rock of my philosophy, to where it's kind of getting polished into the way that makes me really comfortable with it and have an understanding with it. The nice thing about that is I know that doesn't have to be the exact way that everybody does everything to be happy or to enjoy life. The funnest part that I've come to find about philosophy is that mine may be perfect for me and Jay's may be perfect for Jay. And that's the most interesting aspect of it. Those are the best conversations I've ever had, where we both have it figured out. But because of our unique situations, those are completely different. And then you walk away from the conversation saying, man, I don't think I have it figured out. I get to philosophize some more and some more and some more. So. I think that's really been a good, it's been a good determining factor of my philosophy. A lot of it is reflection of my past, right? I was able to see habitual things, or things that I don't really know why, if it was just the way I grew up or where I grew up or the influence. Maybe it was, a lot of people want to blame rap music. I could probably blame rap music for quite a bit of it, as a lot of people see with my style and whatnot. But a lot of it has been reflection. Mostly, I would say, is reflection, and then observation of the world, and reflection of my past and my life probably has been the main characteristic that's buffed out my philosophical stance.
Do you consider yourself an inquisitive person, a curious person by nature?
Not really. I don't think so. I've had a fortunate blessing to be around some amazing situations, amazing equipment, amazing stories, and I don't really dig deep and rip it all apart and diagnose it. I would say more or less I'm curious sometimes. And I think for some reason, I think I just get an endorphin rush of observing the world or people in it and discovering something that not everybody else can see. Right. So for some reason, I don't think I get a high off of it, but it makes me, that's the reminder to me that there's more to life than just living, breathing, making money, reproducing, and dying. Right. So I enjoy to be in that thin space that not a lot of people hover in.
So you had Blacktop Banter for years now, and many podcasts or many shows are released and they fizzle out. I mean, the statistics are clear. What about you has kept you in the game, as they say? And then what would be your advice to listeners that want to be doing what we're doing as part of their life, part of their business development?
Well, I think the main thing is, make sure if you're going to do something like this, that the base is what you really enjoy and what you're good at. If you do it, and I think you can do that in any niche. I just think if you do it because you want to be like somebody else, or be like a certain industry person or whatever, you're probably going to lose out. You can't sustain that, right? You can't sustain who you are. And even if, I just had a guest on the podcast, who's the current editor for Pavement Maintenance magazine. And when he first came into the industry, he was kind of trying to measure up and be like, I was in this industry for so long and did this and this. And then after that falling flat, he made an adjustment because we all knew that he didn't know crap about our industry, right? He made an adjustment to where it was, now I don't know anything about this industry. Teach me, right? Show me. And he embraced that to where some of his social media content is, his name is Brandon. It's like, watch Brandon do another asphalt thing very poorly, right?
Huh.
And he's running plate compactors and it looks like he has no idea what he's doing. That's because he doesn't. And he's embraced it. And now that content is something that's fun to watch, right? It's fun to understand this guy doesn't know anything and he knows he doesn't know anything. Let's see what happens, versus I'm trying to measure up to everybody else and be on this level playing field. So to me, the best advice is, regardless what niche it is, be yourself. Make sure that the content in your podcast embraces who you are and where you're at in life, not necessarily where you're trying to get to. That's your goal, right? That's for you to work on personally. Don't try to reflect what you aren't. Embrace who you are right now. That's going to attract the attention that keeps you there for a long time. Blacktop Banter's in its 4th year. I didn't know how long it was going to go, right? And I definitely didn't know it was going to get to a scale where we're traveling to be with you all, right, in Pittsburgh at the stadium and do Blacktop Banter live there, or Charlotte and do Blacktop Banter live there, or Vegas or wherever. I didn't know that, right? When I was young, for one example, when I was young, I raced ATVs on the frozen lakes up here. Racing has been kind of part of my life growing up, never really inquisitive, right? And never really like geeking out about it, but just enjoying the concept of trying to make this thing to all the way to the end and then try to be at the front. Now, come full circle, Blacktop Banter, a good portion of it features racing because of the pavement that these guys race on, whether it's NASCAR, IndyCar, or whatever. I have a history and a background where I'm able to speak about it a little bit, but not crazy in depth. And that's falling back on what I know, right? And who I am still yet. So it's very important to make sure that you aren't getting crazily outside of the box and trying to do something that you have no idea about. If you're going to ask questions about it because you're curious, make that part of the bit, make that part of the show of, I don't know what's going on, but I want to figure it out. That's a lot about philosophy with me. I'm late to the game. It's not something that I studied, but the older I get, the more I realize the importance of it in my life. And now I start to study it a little bit more and more.
You mentioned going to the different groups, like physically putting yourself in those rooms. How important is it to be in the room? And what's your philosophy? Because you're on the road. You're building this, your companies, your media presence, everything. So how important is it to be in the room, and what's your take on that? People need to view this work ethics strategy.
Yeah, for sure. One of the biggest things for us that we preach here, and I preach it because of our friends and who we've been around and the effect it's had on me, is if somebody wants to change their life, the very first thing they have to do is change their atmosphere, right? To me, that's the basis, and that's the flat line. I'm speaking to you now from our apartment. We have a home not too far away. When I'm in Blacktop Banter mode, I'm at the apartment. I'm disconnected from everything else. I make sure to control my environment. The same thing with my friends groups. And I'm strict. I'm really strict, Jay. I have family members, close family members, who, if they aren't within the prerequisites for my atmosphere, they're not in it. And they're not in it at all until they will fit in that, or unless I make an adjustment till they fit in there. So I'm pretty strict with it. And to me, that's the biggest number one thing, is changing your atmosphere. You have the power to do it. A lot of people complain like, man, I got the worst friends, or when I go to work, it's this or whatever. It's all choice. Everything in life is a result of choice, no matter what, after a certain point, right? After I became 16 years old or whatever, my home situation became my choice. I had choices to move out. I did move out. I changed my atmosphere. Everything that has got me to this point has been a result of me changing my atmosphere. Changing that atmosphere is the basis for me changing my habits as well, and them being able to stick, right? Because if I'm in a crappy atmosphere and I'm trying to change my habits, there's going to be too much influence to really make them stick. You know, you can have influence and you can withstand it for a while, but to me, you tend to break depending on what your atmosphere is. So why not make it easier? Even if it's just you or you're just solo. A lot of me in the social media game came from me isolating myself and taking content from Gary Vaynerchuk, and I consumed it for months and months on end. Yeah. And then that's really what was the Kickstarter. And for me in the industry, I think that's why it had me at the forefront when the timing was right to be in front of everybody, to be speaking about social media and really killing it at it, is because I isolated myself, put myself in an atmosphere where that's all I consume. I believed at that point that I knew more than everybody else, and I probably did. So I was able to jump out in front and speak candidly on it, show examples of it, and really hit some out of the park with virality and whatnot, to where, okay, this guy does know what he's talking about. Once I realized changing your atmosphere was the main thing, that's when I became friends with our friends that you and I mutually have. And beyond that, right, I don't necessarily stay in that atmosphere. I'm sure you've noticed as well, because I need to consume more outside of that so that I have a different look than everybody else.
How has the business played into this grand scheme? And for those that don't yet know you or understand the industry, what industry are you in? What business are you in? And how has Blacktop Banter influenced business and business influenced that?
Yeah, so I'm in the asphalt industry for the most part. Once I realized I was pretty sharp, I kind of knew I was sharp. School was very easy. Everything was very easy for me when it came to education or any kind of, even work was easy for me. I started working real young when I was 12. I can outwork everybody. I still think I may not be able to outwork you in the moment, but I'm definitely going to outlast, right? Everybody. My endurance is pretty high. So that's part of what has influenced me quite a bit, right? The podcast, even though early on it wasn't sharp, I had more endurance than everybody else, and I was able to get past that point. Doing blacktop work and asphalt work in Wis-Coat. Early on, dude, if I made a couple $100, I was on cloud nine. That was more money than I'd ever seen, and I was a young man and thought, "Woo, all right, dude, you're killing it." I go to my first National Pavement Expo, and I hear guys talk numbers, and I'm like, I'm still poor, right? I'm still very poor if we're talking monetarily. And I realized it was just easy adjustments and things that I needed to learn that I could do to bring up my level to where I am. I never really chased those guys monetarily, and even now I don't. I'm very impressed, and I'm super happy for my friends. I congratulate them all the time when they hit their sales goals or they're breaking records. And it's more for the fact that they're breaking records and that they're striving they're striving to improve themselves, right? That's really what I congratulate people on. It's not necessarily the money, because I know that there are people who have massive amounts of wealth that aren't happy, right? So I think that for me, the two businesses, the asphalt side and Blacktop Banter side, have went hand in hand very well together, because Blacktop Banter has allowed me to get outside of where I am geographically and outside of where I am philosophically and intellectually and relationship wise. And that's been super important.
We love adverbs on the Culture Matters podcast.
I know.
I'm huge on them.
I know. Yeah, that's been super important to me, man, because I've watched Wis-Coat mean something to my community and to people that watch in a way that I never expected before. And that's been because of my interactions outside of our community and just building the business here, right? I interact, which you do, and we know as well, very candidly with our community and our industry all year long, which I didn't do beforehand. And I think, me looking back, and I think this is a good thing. I think people should have this insight and this feeling. I'm not the person I was 10 years ago. I'm not the person I was 5 years ago. I really strive to not be the person I was 1 year ago, right? And in our society, there's this thing where, hey man, you've changed. To me, I'm like, thank you. Like I'm that means I'm doing some work, right? That means I'm doing what I should be doing. Uh, the society doesn't see it that way all the time as well. And you have to be okay with that, with understanding that when you change, they're not going to change with you. And you shouldn't expect that, right? If everybody's cool with you and saying, you know, everything's fine, that worries me a little bit because I want to be sure that I'm changing and adapting. So Blacktop Banner has allowed me to do that at Wis-Coat. So I think it's very important with whatever industry you're in, whatever niche you're in, to interact with people outside of your geographical area and interact outside of your community. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to have a podcast and do in-depth questions and really pick things apart, but change your atmosphere, change it slightly. I always, there's an analogy about our mutual friend Brian always says, hey man, if you turn the thermostat up, if you're the thermostat and you turn it up to 78, guess what? Everybody's got to become 78, right? And if you turn it down to 50, everybody's got to become 50. Jump into some different rooms. It doesn't necessarily have to be the cold plunge, right? But you can do it slightly, and a little bit over time, you start to notice a different transition that you're comfortable with. But staying stagnant and staying in the same place and expecting that your life is going to change or you're going to be happier is futile to me.
Those other values that are in the office.
Yeah.
Can we unpack those as we close here?
Sure. The second one is the first one is be positive. The second one is you don't half-ass it, right? So that's our big thing here. Where I live, that's a common phrase, right? People get called half-assing it. To me, if I'm giving 100%, I expect everybody else to give 100%. No, your 100% doesn't have to be at my level, but I have to know that you're exerting it, right, to get there. That's important for everybody around and important for morale as well. The second one is, or the third one would be, we have goals here. I want everybody there to have goals. They know that we have goals as a company and that those need to be reminded that that's why we're doing what we do. Is for our goals, and they should change once they're accomplished. They should change. Some of them we set very, very high so that we exceed our mark, and some of them we don't. Some of them we set their small goals to get us on our journey to our big goals. And the last one, and I think that this is the most important one for me, and I think it's the most important one for our employees, is you get what you give, right? So if you're giving, and that's in any aspect of life, whether that's relationship wise, work wise, whatever, you get what you give. And to me, that's the most important one, because if you want a lot, you should give a lot. If you want very little, you should give very little in every aspect.
You think, it just made me think, like, do you feel like you've broken the cycle?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I broke a cycle, but then I also feel like I jumped into another cycle. Right. I know that's philosophy, I've come to find out. I know that I've inspired a lot of people close to me and in my family and in the community where I grew up and the people around me that I grew up, because I did it a completely different way. And at the beginning, I looked like I was crazy, I imagine. And now the things that I spoke about and understood have become commonplace. And now I'm speaking about things that are out of the box yet. And people listen, and they listen because I have a good track record up to this point. I feel like I did break the cycle. What I worry about is I have children, as we spoke about earlier. I worry about, and I've become an observationist, pretty in depth. I worry that their brains aren't built like mine are. I worry about the interaction between their spirit and their soul and their brains aren't going to interact the way that mine does. Because I want them to be happy, right? But then I also have come to find out that if you're naive, you're pretty happy too, right? So maybe it is better, maybe it isn't better, right? These are those quotes and those philosophical things that we speak about. I just want them to be happy. So if they have a mind like mine and a heart like mine, I would love to guide them on that to find happiness, which I'm trying to do. If they don't, and they're happy watching NASCAR going out on a boat on the lake and they enjoy every bit of their life, cool. I'm cool with that too. But I feel like I've been able to break the cycle of not being able to focus on those things. And those are the most important things in life. I wasn't able to think about those things, Jay, for when I was born until I was probably 30 years old, right? The last 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years have really been the years of me finding myself and understanding who I am. If they want to be able to find that, I'm thankful that I've been able to break a cycle that's be able to create a way for them to be able to do that.
In closing, what do you want the audience to take away from this conversation?
I think the main thing is changing your atmosphere is the way to change your mind. To change your situation, you do need to have a mind change. We spoke a little bit earlier about me losing some weight and whatnot. I looked at those pictures from when you and I were in Pittsburgh, right? And the person that I seen in those pictures did not reflect the person that I wanted to be in my heart and in my soul. And it was because of habit and because I wasn't able to wrangle in some stuff that I should have been able to wrangle in. I was able to do that by changing my atmosphere, right? And I didn't do it for anybody else. I did it for me. I want to feel good about myself every day when I wake up, and like who I am when I look in the mirror. To me, changing your mind is how you do that. Changing your mindset. The basis for that is changing your atmosphere. You know, we speak a lot about coaching groups and hiring coaches and having masterminds and all these things. And they have a stigma, I think, if you're outside of that box to begin with. But when you're in it and you see the changes that happen in your life and you start to be really happy, then you realize how important they are. And if you can't get in mastermind groups and those types of things, you can still change your atmosphere. Don't hang out where you hang out. Hang out around the atmosphere that you know the person you want to be would exist in, and go there and start doing that. And over time, that you polish out those rough edges.
We'll have to do a part 2 on health and fitness when you do your fitness competition.
Yeah.
Next year.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try to do a 5K here coming up soon.
Come back on the show. We'll go through it.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Anytime, I would love to speak and be on here and anything, man.
Thanks for coming on, and we will see you all in the next episode of the Culture Matters podcast.